Walk with me.
Save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth. For strangers are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set God before them, Selah. Behold, God is my helper. The I am is with them that uphold my soul. He hath rewarded evil unto my enemies. Cut them off in thy truth. I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Yah, for it is good. For he hath delivered me out of trouble, and my eye hath seen his desire upon mine enemies. Yes, Psalms chapter 54. Deliver me from the hands of evil spirits, who have sway over the thoughts of men's hearts, and let them not lead me astray from thee, O my God. Establish thou me and my family forever, that we go not astray from henceforth and forevermore. Jubilees chapter 12 and verse 20. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, those of you on this platform and other platforms and shared platforms. We thank God for you, and we also praise with a hand clap of praise. We thank God for those of you who have been with us since the beginning. Yes, 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 we thank God you have so much in your arsenal of word. Yes, and those of you who have came thereafter and here and there's about, we thank God for you too, and you the same, and also those of you that have just subscribed. We give God the glory and the praise for you. And we give God the glory and the praise for those of you that are about to subscribe, and we thank God for you in calling those things that are not as though they are. Yes, all praises to the Most High, all praises. Yes, He is worthy. Hallelujah, hallelujah, He's worthy. He's worthy of all praise. Yes, praise, 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 praise. That wonderful Creator, that wonderful God, that wonderful power, that wonderful deliverer. Yes, he's not Jesus. No, he's not. Those of you who look at that part, you need to go somewhere else. But either way, yes, we're in chapter 48 of the book of Jasher chapter 48. And we stopped with the 33rd chapter of the 33rd, 47th chapter and 33rd verse. And even before that, we found out Esau took all the possessions, those things that he could carry. He took them along with him. As far as the land, he left them to Jacob. And it says in 33, and the whole land of Canaan became the inheritance of the children of Israel for an everlasting inheritance. Now, these were Hamites, or some of you call them Africans, or Cushites, or Egyptians, or Mizraim. This is who they were. This is what they were. Yes. And I want you to just go to your maps and read and understand. Go to the old maps. You can Google them. Find out where the land of Shem. It says Shem, but it's really the land of Israel. God gave Jacob a vast land. Even Esau's heart was turned that he didn't take it all. And the maps, as far as his land, Esau that moved around. Esau was like a nomad. He mated with every type of people. His children mated with some of everybody. And he's still trying to claim that he is the chosen one, when he knew good and well. Their father knew this. He accepted it. And in chapter 48, in those days after the death of Isaac, the I Am commanded and caused a famine upon the whole earth. Here we go. We're getting into some familiar territory here for many of you. And at the time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was sitting upon his throne in the land of Egypt, and lay in his bed and dreamed dreams. And Pharaoh saw in his dream that he was standing by the side of the river of Egypt. And whilst he was standing, he saw and behold 7 fat flesh and well-favored kine, or cows. Whatever kind of cows they have. There are many different, races of cows, if you want to put it that way. Some got long horns, some black, some white, some pink, some gold, some red. But they're cows. And they came up out of the river. And seven other cows, lean in flesh and ill-favored, came up after them. In other words, they like them, you know them cows that you see, their sternum in the back or their pelvis, and it looked like they just malnutrition. This is the kind of cows he saw. Ill-favored. They're not fat enough. Not even worth eating. And then after them, then the 7 ill-favored ones swallowed up the well-favored ones. And still their appearance was ill as the first. And he awoke, and he slept again in his dream a second time. And he saw, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good, and 7 thin ears blasted with the east wind sprang up. And after them, the thin ears swallowed up the full ones. And Pharaoh woke out of his dream. You can about assess what Pharaoh was dreaming. And in the morning, the king remembered his dreams, and his spirit was sadly troubled on account of his dreams. And the king hastened and sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt. See, they had magicians. They were devils. I mean, see, if you ever read the books, there's a book called The Demonologist. And he talks about, and this guy was a Catholic. He was Catholic, and he read some of the books that they have written throughout the centuries. And he talked about how that these demons lurked around the king, around the rulers, around your president, around his cabinet's members, even dealing and going to and fro, working both ends. They're evil. Yes, it's evil to you because it doesn't go against what is right for you. It's evil. And they're there, especially with those that are in authority, even in corporations and different things. These evil beings are there. They can deal in logic. They can deal in all kinds of things. They can show you things that you think is true, but eventually it looks true, but it turns out a blatant lie. Yes. Now, he sent for his magicians. These people were working, they had, these are the spirits, or these are the spirit, they're gods. These magicians have called upon their gods, should I say, of Egypt, and wise men, and they came and stood before Pharaoh. And the king said to them, I have dreamed dreams, and there is none to interpret them. And they said unto the king, relate thy dreams to thy servant, and let us hear them. And the king related his dreams to them, and they all answered and said with one voice to the king, may the king live forever. Fat chance of that. And this is the interpretation of all thy dreams. The 7 good kinds which thou didst see, the not 7 daughters which will be... Oh my God, that's way far-fetched. I mean, if they had any common sense, they would know that cows were for eating. Corn was for eating, okay? I mean, this good deduction. It said, 7 daughters will be born to thee in the latter days, and 7 kind which thou sawest come up from after them, and swallow them up for a sign, that the daughters which will be born unto thee all die in the lifetime of the king. Okay. Verse 10. And that which thou didst see in the second dream of 7 full good ears of corn coming up, one stalk, this is their interpretation, that thou wilt build unto thyself in the latter days 7 cities throughout the land of Egypt, and that thou which sawest of the 7 blasted ears of corn springing up after them and swallowing them up, whilst thou didst behold them in thine eyes, is for a sign that the cities which thou hast built will all be destroyed in the latter days and in the lifetime of the king. Yes, again. Okay. And when they spoke these words, the king did not incline to hear his ear to their words. In other words, something is wrong about your interpretation. Y'all get out my face. And neither did he fix his heart upon them, for the king knew in his wisdom that they did not give a proper interpretation of the dreams. And when they had finished speaking before the king answered them, saying, what is this thing that you have spoken unto me? Surely you have uttered falsehood and spoken lies, therefore. In other words, their thoughts have been swayed by spirits. Yes, they just out of the blue. You just don't think no thought that you think out of the blue. You got to remember, you are a spirit. As small as it is, the body is vast. Can nothing possess your body? It possesses your mind, your brain. And those of you that do know, your brain sends electrical signals and signals of proteins and all this stuff. It sends it to the rest of the body to function, to touch, to feel, to pain, cold, heat, chills, fear, doubt. All these things affect your body in many ways. And this devils know how to deal with your mind to affect your body also. Now, and the king commanded after this, and he sent and called again for other wise men, and they came and stood before the king, and the king related his dreams to them, and they all answered him according to the first interpretation. It was in cohesion, wasn't it? And the king answered, anger was kindled. Yes, and he was very wroth, and the king said unto them, surely you speak lies and order falsehoods in what you have said. And the king commanded that a proclamation should be issued throughout the land of Egypt, saying, it is resolved by the king and his great men that any wise man who knoweth and understandeth the interpretation of dreams and will not come this day before the king shall die. Yes, he said such a thing. And verse 14, and the man that will declare unto the king the proper interpretation of his dreams, there shall be given unto him all that he will require from the king. And all the wise men of the land of Egypt came before the king, together with all the magicians and sorcerers that were in Egypt and in Goshen and in Ramses. Okay, Goshen was not yet occupied by the children of Jacob. And in Tachpanches, in Zoar. Okay, in Zoar. Zoar is in Egypt. It couldn't have been far. And in all the places on the borders of Egypt, on the borders, that's where it is, on the borders of Egypt. And they all stood before the king. And all the nobles and the princes and the attendants belonging to the king came together from all the cities of Egypt. And they all sat before the king. And the king related his dreams before the wise men and the princes, and all that sat before the king was astonished at the vision. Pharaoh, king, really it should be Pharaoh, because Pharaoh was started. Jubilees, this book of Jasher also tell you how the term Pharaoh originated. And all the wise men who were before the king greatly divided in their interpretation of dreams. And some of them interpret them to be the king saying, the 7 good kind are 7 kings who from the king's issue will be raised over Egypt. And the 7 bad kind are 7 princes who will stand up against them in the latter days to destroy them. And the 7 ears of corn are great princes belonging to Egypt who will fall in the hands of 7 less powerful princes of their enemies in the wars of our great king. And some of them interpret the king to in this manner, saying, the 7 good kind are the strong cities of Egypt, and the 7 bad kinds are the 7 nations of the land of Canaan, who will come against the 7 cities of Egypt in the latter days and destroy them. And that which thou sawest in the second dream of the 7 good and bad ears of corn is the sign that the government of Egypt will again return to thy seed at first. And in his reign, the people of the cities of Egypt will turn against the 7 cities of Canaan, who are stronger than they. And these are their brothers. You got Mitzrayim, and then you got Canaan. You got Hamites. They're brothers. Their father is Ham. Who are stronger than they. And they will destroy them, and the government of Egypt will return to thy seed. And some of them said unto the king, this is the interpretation. Another one. Of thy dreams. The 7 good kind are 7 queens, whom thou wilt take for wives in the latter days. And the 7th bad kind denotes those women will all die in the lifetime of king. And the 7 good and bad ears of corn, which thou didst see in the second dream, are 14 children. And it will be in the latter days that they will stand up and fight amongst themselves, and 7 of them will smite the 7 that are more powerful. Well, they didn't come up with some stuff, hadn't they? I mean, what that got to do with food? And some of them said these words unto the king, saying, the 7 good kind denote that the 7 children will be born to thee, and they will slay 7 of thy children in the latter days. And the 7 good ears of corn, which thou didst see in the second dream, are those princes against whom 7 other less powerful princes will fight and destroy them in the latter days, and avenge thy children, and cause the government, and the government will again return to thy seed. And the king heard all the words of the wise men of Egypt and their interpretation of his dreams, and none of them pleased the king. In other words, in himself, he's just saying, this don't sound right. Okay? Verse 25. And the king, in his wisdom, that they did not altogether speak correctly in all these words, for this was from the I am, to frustrate the words of the wise men. He frustrated the wisdom of the wise. This is a song. I know it's a song. God frustrates the wisdom of the wise, the mages, the soothsayers, the mediums. Yes, even those who seek to bring up the dead. Now, see, these is where you get the type of ancestral worship that they're talking about. Now, see, the ancestral worship, there is no ancestral worship. It's just saying, I was listening to a notice, man, Mapunga, yes, God of our fathers. He put it out, God of our fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. In other words, even to the point where Joseph, in his anguish, he began to call on his mother when he came near his grave, when the Midianites had stopped for rest. And he called upon his mother, and God even grant him, if you read in the book of Enoch, there's a place for the righteous dead. He allowed her to answer him, but she only answered him in the words of that the Most High allowed her to answer him. She didn't exalt herself. She didn't have any special powers or nothing. She couldn't protect him or anything. But later on, you'll find that Joseph he honored the Most High. So your ancestors can do nothing for you. If God allows them to talk to you, that's good. But if you make it a habit of talking to your ancestors to the point where they take the place of your creator, where they take the place and you begin to worship them and give them sacrifices of food and all kind of things, then you get into idolatry. That's idolatry. Note my words. To say, God, I wish that my mama could talk to me, and you might even talk to your mama or your daddy or those who are significant in your life, or great-grandfather or great-granddaddy or something. You might even talk to them. But there's a line that you should not cross. And tell the truth, those in the ancient days did not cross that line. I mean, it was just something when they were faced with things, they would just call on God. Yes, I can agree with that. Now, it says now, and the king knew in his wisdom that they all did not altogether speak correctly in all these words. For this was from the I am, to frustrate the words of the wise men of Egypt in order that Joseph might go forth from the house of confinement in order that he should become great in Egypt. See, God already had a plan. Joseph went through a testing time, and it was harsh. You got to realize before God begins to deliver, before God begins to set free, there's going to come a time of testing. There's going to come a time of testing. Jacob, you're going to be tested. It's already written. It's already there. It's not that what's going overseas right now. God is just turning them against each other that they might free up the land. Eventually, they're going to be erased. But the fact is that God is setting up that he might choose. And it's going to be well noted that small believing group of people that will stand with their God. I ain't talking about with no Esau. It doesn't say that in the book of Esau, or should I say Enoch. It doesn't say that. It says God is going to come with 10,000 of his anointed. I didn't quote that correctly. I sort of paraphrased it, but in other words, it didn't say no Jesus. Nothing prophesied of nothing to that, nothing but the New Testament. Other than that, it was all about God. God lost his rulership over his people when Eve and Jacob wanted to be like everybody else. Jacob wanted a king. When God was his king, he delegated, he used men as he used angels, but they couldn't see that. He used the tribe of Levi just as he used angels to judge and to hold sacrifices and to minister unto himself. But I believe many of them have gotten jealous because of that. You want power, but you don't want power the right way. It's best to remain meek and know your place in God, just like a woman should know her place in her husband's house. Yes, in doing so, it is your house too. Let us continue. And the king commanded that all wise men and magicians should go out from before him, and they all went out from before the king with shame and disgrace. In other words, they were lying. And the king commanded that a proclamation be sent throughout Egypt to slay all the magicians that were in Egypt, and not one of them should be suffered to live. In other words, they were able to summon these devils and do magic and all kind of things. They understood many mystical things and everything, just as they taught them before the flood. Egypt was taught a lot of things, and also all throughout the continent. They were taught a lot of things, and they shared with each other those things that they were taught. Whether they sit up there and they thought about a mind. Look at the man that invented a television that can run without any electricity. There's electricity, it's just all in the air, and he figured out a way to harness it and produce power. He said God showed him. Did not he give glory to the Most High? He didn't just say, oh, it just came up by some crazy demon or his gods or some ill-favored wicked devil. No. He blessed God. Now, here they are. They're stumped for words always being right, but now God has suffered them to tell lies and be mistrusted. In verse 29, and the captains of the guards belonging to the king rose up. Each man drew his sword, and they began to smite the magicians of Egypt and the wise men. In other words, you don't lie to me, man. Don't be telling me no lies. I don't care how much you can float in the sky or cause yourself to make snakes and all this other stuff. No. You lying to me. This is the king talking here. And after this, Murad, chief butler to the king, the same one that when Joseph was saying, remember me. That should be the least of our worries, that man might remember us. We don't need to be remembered. If God forgets you, you've forgotten. But he remembers those who are right before his eyes, whom have a purpose in him. He remembers them. He has a time and a place where he remembers them to bring them forth in that which he called them to do. No, not in your time. And you can't, even if you have a calling from the Most High, man, It's not because they don't feel you're ready. God knows when you're ready, and you know. Don't worry about everybody else. Forget them. Forget them. I mean, just put them from your mind. They don't count. They don't matter for when God's will is in your life and is being pushed in your life. And the butler said unto the king, may the king live forever and his government be exalted in the land. Verse 32. Thou wast angry with thy servant in those days. Now 2 years passed, and didst place me in the ward, and I was for some time in the ward, I and the chief bakers. And there was with us an Hebrew servant belonging to the captain of the guard, and his name was Joseph, or Yosef, or whatever Egyptian name he would say that in. See, we have to, when we're reading these scriptures, we have to really think about, to get our minds, although it's our understanding to understand English or that language, your coastal language, or your or whatever languages you speak in Nigeria, or over there in the EU, or whatever in Australia, whatever language you are speaking, or China, or whatever. To forget that English or forget that language, and we have to really understand that the language that they are speaking is in their language. And most of the Bible was written in what they call Hebrew. It really wasn't called Hebrew at that time. It's just what it's called by popularism, put it that way. And thou was angry with thy servant. In verse 33, we're going to skip to that. And there was with us a Hebrew servant belonging to the captain of the guard. And his name was Joseph, or whatever his name in your language is, or in that language that they're speaking. For his master had been angry with him and placed him in the house of confinement. For he attended us there, and in some time after, when we were in ward, we dreamed dreams in one night, and I and the chief of the bakers, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. Yes. And we came in the morning and told them to that servant, and he interpreted to us our dreams, and to each man according to his dream. In other words, God gave Joseph relevancy to what their dreams mean. Relevancy to 3 days the birds pluck upon your head. In other words, your head's going to be taken off your body, cool? Well, that it was relevancy. Your dreams will come relevant, and God will give those things that are relevant. And though if he don't want a person to know, their whole mind will just slip, even though they hear it and they call themselves interpreting. So you have to really seek God in interpretation of your dreams, and God will awaken your understanding when that right interpretation comes. And it came to pass that he interpreted to us, so was the event, and there fell not to the ground any of his words. Now that's one thing we ought to pray. When we interpret dreams or we say things to people that we feel an unction from the Most High to say, that we pray, oh, most holy Yahweh Yahuwah, don't let my words fall to the ground. In other words, I pray I heard you correctly. And now, therefore, my awesome king, do not slay the people of Egypt for nothing. Behold, that slave is still confined in the house by the captain of the guard. Now, this is what God is getting ready to exalt him. Sometimes you have to be made low to be exalted. There's a lot of things to take these historical events and just add them to what you see and how you're going to see God. You can't just go by the lights and glitter and gold and modern wisdom, because a lot of this modern wisdom is no good. False. Now, he says now, and the king, if it pleases the king, let him send for him, in verse 38, that he might come before thee, and he will make known to thee the correct interpretation of the dream which thou didst dream. And the king heard the words of the chief butler, and the king ordered that the wise men of Egypt should not be slain. And the king ordered his servant to bring Joseph before him. And the king said to them, go to him, and do not terrify him, lest he be confused, and will not know to speak properly. In other words, make him comfortable. And the servants of the king went to Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and the king's servant shaved him and cleaned and changed his prison garment, and he came before the king. Yes. He came before the king. God is ready to exalt. He's ready to exalt him. And all those that have been through and don't know why you're going through things, or don't know why things are happening the way they are, whatever country you're in, don't know why the deaths or the misusings and all the people are being driven out and all these other things. But it's best if you humble yourself and ask God, what are you doing? How am I to make sense of this, of what you're doing in the land? See, some people live in a delusional world because they never suffered anything. But those of you who are going through suffering, you're seeing the blood, you're seeing all these things, the bombs and all, you're seeing these things firsthand. But yet you got in some places where all they worried about is how a doggone woman loves a man or how a man thinks of a woman, when bigger fish to fry. Yes, even Congo, even also in the areas up north. You got Burkina Faso. You got all these places which your enemies surround you every day. But why do God take you through? Because it's now time to come before the king. Talk to the king, even God himself, who is our king. He was king before even the kings of, should I say, Jacob, that came out of Jacob. He's the king that was rejected. It wasn't, he was the rejected cornerstone. He was the rejected king. Yes, he was. You all put it all on Jesus. See, this, how can a black Jesus sit up there and all of a sudden with a black Pharisee and Sadducee and then turn out to come out with no black in it at all? Make this make sense. But with that, we're going to say peace.
Walk with me.